As Israel continues its bombardment of Gaza, violence against Palestinians in the West Bank is escalating. Human rights groups say that settlers and military forces alike are using the cover of this war to step up their ongoing campaign of brutal attacks on Palestinian communities. Israel is conducting raids and airstrikes in what it says are attempts to root out possible militant groups as the territory buckles under military lockdown. With us to discuss the situation in the West Bank is the Palestinian Authority's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Husam Zomlot. Husam, thank you for joining us on UpFront.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me, and good to see you.
Absolutely. Violence towards Palestinians in the West Bank has surged since Hamas's attack, escalating what was already the deadliest year since the United Nations began tracking in 2005. Settlers and Israeli forces have killed at least 155 Palestinians, including 41 children. They've also injured more than 2,200 more. Israeli forces are carrying out raids and airstrikes and have placed the West Bank under a military lockdown, which makes it extremely difficult for residents to leave their cities and their towns. Help me understand a little bit more about what's going on the ground.
Well, what is going on the ground has been going on for a long time, Mark. You've seen the expansion of these illegal colonial settlements. You have seen the checkpoints, the walls, the infrastructure built to allow these colonial cities now to actually be connected to Israel and encircle the main urban centers of the Palestinian people. And now we are faced with a very organized settler militias who have been on the rampage over the last couple of years, but particularly since the aggression on Gaza began. They took that not only from a militia point of view, but from a political point of view, because they have their masters, and their masters are senior ministers in the government. You know, this government is made of several illegal settlers, including Smotrich and Ben Gvir, and Netanyahu himself as the big backer of the settlement exercise. The world has seen Ben Gvir, who is a convicted terrorist in an Israeli court, not even in an international court, handing machine guns over the last few weeks since the war on Gaza began to settlers and to civilians. And the results is what you just described, a huge number, unprecedented murders and killing of Palestinian civilians in the West Bank, attacks all over villages, pogroms in every sense, setting fire on homes, shops, cars, including Deir Sharaf only a few days ago, and many other towns and villages around the West Bank. And the plan is very clear. The plan is to terrorize the population and to continue what they have begun in 1948. And here the link between the West Bank and Gaza. And here is the mistake of anyone to discuss Gaza in isolation of the West Bank, and the West Bank, including, of course, Jerusalem, in isolation of Gaza. And let me just confirm that what Israel is doing now in Gaza, Mark, is a rerun of the 1948 Nakba events.
Are you worried that this could get even worse? I mean, according to the UN, daily settler attacks in the West Bank have doubled in the weeks following the October 7th events. Ultra-nationalist settlers in the West Bank have driven out entire villages. They've killed at least 8 Palestinians. And human rights organizations are warning that the focus on Gaza is being used as a kind of pretext to drive people out of their villages, as you pointed out, very similar to the Nakba of 1948. In fact, people have received Arabic language leaflets that warn Palestinians that, quote, this is their last chance to flee to Jordan before, quote, we forcefully expel you from our holy lands, saying, you wanted a Nakba like in 1948, and we will bring down on you a big catastrophe soon. This seems potentially worse than anything we've seen since 1948. Is that an overstatement?
No, it is not. But the only thing that I would add, it's not they're using Gaza to gaslight or deflate. No, they are just doing the same in the West Bank and Gaza. The very same plan. They're pushing the very same people, the Palestinian people. And since the very beginning of the aggression, we have been saying and warning everybody, this isn't a war on Hamas. This is a war on the Palestinian people. This is to finish off the unfinished business, what they have been describing. And today, we have militias in the West Bank distributing leaflets, spreading fear, attacking communities in the hope that these communities will have to be forced out of their homes, and then the hope that these settlers illegally living in the occupied territory will actually take over their homes and physically live in their homes as they did in 1948. So why is Israel doing this? It is definitely to terrorize the entire nation, the whole people of Gaza, push them out towards Sinai.
Husam, one of the ways that the Palestinian people now are supported in their efforts to resist is through the Palestinian Authority. The PA's president, Mahmoud Abbas, said that the PLO is the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. But there are many Palestinians, as you know, who are unhappy with President Abbas. One Palestinian asked, where are they when we need them, when settlers attack us in the fields or on the roads? Earlier this year, just 19% said they trusted Fatah, and the majority said that the PA should actually be dissolved. Given the high level of mistrust and the fact that the PA has not had a presidential election since 2005, should the PA or should the PLO be the representative of all Palestinian people? Is it fair to say that you're the representative of all the Palestinian people?
You have to, number one, President Abbas is elected by his movement, that is Fatah, that was founded by him and the late President Yasser Arafat and many of their colleagues. That's the national movement that has really turned us from refugees to freedom fighters, snatched the recognition from the entire world when we were absolutely disappearing after the Nakba of '48, and enforced that Palestinians have one voice, one flag, one address, one representation. Now this is a must. This is the biggest achievement of the Palestinian people, that we have one voice, and we will not allow anybody to undermine that. This is different than individuals and personalities. There are many nations who have absolutely vanished from earth because they were leaderless, because they had no national institutions to represent them. And don't let me start here listing you how many people. History is full of people who have completely been annihilated. So the most important thing that we speak in one voice. Yes, there are concerns, there are demands, we need to reform, we need to bring our representation to the most democratic values and standards. That's all understood, and we must do that. However, don't throw the baby with the bathtub. The PLO remains there as the umbrella for every Palestinian organization. And you know, this is about making sure that at least you enable your people to stay and steadfast. However, the issue of who lead the Palestinian people is a Palestinian issue.
Many of the Palestinian people are saying they're dissatisfied with the PA. They're saying they want it to dissolve. They're saying they don't trust Fatah.
But Mark,
and obviously they don't trust Hamas either. But they're saying we don't trust things. I mean, my question to you is only how strong can a mandate be if many people are saying, hey, we have skepticism, we have distrust, we want to change?
You know, I've seen the opinion polls about Netanyahu in Israel in the last few days. I've seen the polls about Biden, and he has scored the lowest among even his own party. So this is not the discussion. The Palestinian people are under the most horrific attack since 1948. And this is not now about Palestinian differences. This is about Palestinian unity. We are united by our oppression, by the fact of our oppression, and we are united by our goal to liberate ourselves and get rid of this occupation. We are united as a people, and we do have a political system that represents all of us. And Palestinians are united, and we have an address, and this address has committed to international consensus and resolutions for 30 years, and this address has even recognized Israel 30 years ago, and this address is committing to nonviolence and negotiations, and this address is ready, but once there is enough sufficient commitment that this is the way forward. However, if this address believes that this is not possible, that this is not on the card, I believe you, the PLO, I tell you, the PLO has now a very important crossroad. We are at a fork to decide our next move. How do we protect our people? How do we protect
part of it is protecting people, Husam, and part of it is protecting Gaza. The reason why I was asking about leadership partly is because there's been a lot of speculation about who would govern Gaza if Hamas were defeated. The U.S., of course, has been pushing for the PA to take on a leadership role. It seems unlikely that Israel wants to hand over control to anybody, much less the PA. On Monday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel would control the enclave for an indefinite period, taking on, quote, the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. What some fear is that the Gaza Strip is going to be reoccupied. And partly how it's going to be reoccupied is by people pointing to an ostensible leadership gap. What do you make of that?
You know, many say the day after, and Israel is waiting who's going to take over. Who's going to control? Number one, no one should control, no one can control only the one entity that can be in Gaza is an entity that can provide protection for its people, not control of its people. That's number one. Number two, Israel is not interested in the Palestinian Authority coming back to Gaza. I assure you, 100%, they are not interested. You know why? Because they know the coming back of the national institutions would actually bring back to the fore the state of Palestine, the unity of the land, the unity of the people. Israel has been so adamant in maintaining the Palestinian division. And should I list to you examples, Mark? You know the examples over the last few years. You know what Netanyahu has been doing to maintain the division. This is not the time to talk about it. This is the time to say that all this talk, all this discussion about the day after is used to create schisms and to create tension in Palestine, among Palestinians. We don't need it. Only the state of Palestine can take over. We have learned the lesson of Oslo. First come the end of occupation, including Gaza, because Gaza has been under occupation since Oslo. And since 16 years ago, Israel just removed itself, but controlled every single aspect of the people of Gaza, their movement, their drinking water, their electricity, and you know the rest, the list. And therefore, this is a time when we focus on bringing a momentum to end Israel's occupation, and then the Palestinian people have their institutions, the Palestinian people have their state, the Palestinian people have their legitimacy. It's only the US and the UK and the West who has not come along that legitimacy and who would want to find partial solutions. They have no partners for that. They will not have a partner for that.
Husam Zomlot, thank you so much for joining us on UpFront. All right, everyone, that is our show. UpFront, we'll be back next week.